All right, everybody, welcome back. Get my screen shared here to Coding Bootcamp. Thank you all for coming and joining. Those of you that did, I know a lot of people couldn't make tonight. No worries. We'll send out the recording like every other time. And I know some folks had a question. We were talking a little bit before class started. You are all welcome to join another class in the future. These videos will be available to you after tonight. This isn't like the end of it and you're out the door. Stay in touch with us over Discord. Get involved in our projects. I'm going to pitch you on that a couple more times as we go through things today. And, you know, reach out with a project you're working on. You now have a connection with several. You see how many people are in Discord if you're in there. Other veterans who are learning to code similar to you of varying levels, but we all know these basic technologies. That's the other beauty of going through a boot camp. Like we all know what we know because we've done the same things, right? So stay involved, stay in touch, and you were welcome to come back. But let's wrap it up. Today's the last day for us, week 6. We're doing advanced topics and next steps. Specifically, we're going to talk about version control systems and collaborative coding. So we're going to talk about what version control systems are and collaborative coding in the sense of how we work with other people and other teams and like the professional necessities or the tools that people use professionally. And that necessitates us knowing those. And it's also good for even if you're not going to pursue this professionally, if you're just going to try to use these in your own projects or that sort of thing, version control systems are really fundamental and absolutely something that you need to use and need to know how to use. So we're going to end with that. Quick, let's do our last review, sort of what we were intending to do with this course, our major objectives and our major goals, and what we were trying to achieve. So first of all, is that we were trying to give the same things that paid coding bootcamp does, which probably can't assess since you'd have to go and take one of those, which I do recommend in to a certain degree. Like take other classes, take other courses. Don't just take ours. Work further beyond this. 6 weeks is definitely not enough, but don't pay for it. That's the main thing I want to tell you. That there's plenty of organizations out there that can help find a way for you to get it for free or discounted as a veteran. But look into the resources that we have sent out. Track those other classes down. Our second objective was to build a fully functional web app from scratch, which I know everybody's on the call. We checked in last time. You all, I think, were able to do that, which is excellent. So we delivered on that for sure. And then the intangible objectives of demystifying coding is going to be something that we're going to have to find out from you afterwards. I'm going to send out with the recording for tonight, a little feedback form, quick questions about your experience. Let us know how it went. Let us know how we can improve if we hit these objectives for you. But I know that the last one, we did give you the tools to build anything. We gave you that set of free coding resources, which is, it's definitely the step towards anything that you would want to build. We walked through how to use Python in a web application, which you can now take and build to whatever you want and just put it in, those places that we talked about and expand it in any direction that you like. Do something that's not a web app, do a mobile app with the same principles that we followed here. And generally speaking, again, recapping what we did in our first week, we went over the basics, how computers understand what we say to them, how we put information in, how they understand it. We talked a little bit more about algorithms and data structures in the second week, how we decide what we decide. And then we built our app from weeks 3 to really Tuesday this week. And that was the course. That brings us to our version control systems and collaborative coding. So versions, let's start there. What versions are? This is not totally foreign to everyone. We've all seen these like version 2.0, version 1.3, stuff like that. That is what is called semantic versioning. Semantic meaning that the numbers just have meaning. That's, language nerds like to use semantics for how we ascribe meaning to things. So that's just this point. So the first number in typically a 3-number thing is the major version, then a dot, then the minor version, then a patch version. That means the major version is like new features, not backward compatible. So when we talk about, like, say, Python, we've been using 3.10.12 or 14, something like that. That's not the newest version of Python. The newest version is 3.15, I believe. Point something, I don't know. But they're both major versions of 3, right? So years and years ago, when I started coding, 2 was still being used and 3 had just come out. 2 is totally different. Python 2 is not the same as Python 3. You don't write things the same way. They don't work interchangeably. There was a time where you had to make sure you were able to handle both because both were out there. You're probably not going to see version 2 anymore. So major version is not backwards compatible. That's the biggest thing about it. It's always got some new stuff. Minor versions may or may not have new features. They're usually backwards compatible. So we're using 3.10. If you write something in 3.15, it'll probably work, but there may be some minor issues. Just be aware of that. It's Python versioning in particular. It's kind of finicky with things. You have to be pretty specific about which one you use, but typically speaking, minor versions are backwards compatible. And then patch versions are no new features. Usually it's just like fixing bugs, things like that. They're almost always backwards compatible in the sense of like, 10.12.37 works with 10.12.4. That should be fine. And then another thing that you'll hear a lot of times, this is one way of talking about versions is semantic versioning. The other way that we typically talk about versions of software and things like that are steps in the development process, right? So that's from development, which is usually the local, what we've been doing on your own machine or something like that, where you write new experimental features. And then it'll move from there into some sort of testing phase and maybe a whole formal phase of testing done by a totally different team. Testing is one of those places where people who are new at this and coding have little experience. Things like QA and testing and those sorts of things are routes to get into the industry for sure. Like being in that stage of the development process is one place to start. And then after testing, it'll usually move into staging, where it'll be in the context of, say, a web app like we've been doing. It'll be up on a website, but that site won't be publicly accessible. So it'll go through all the HTTP things and touch on the servers and go through the database interactions to make sure that it works the way that it's expected to, but it's not available for public yet. And the production version is the publicly available version of the software. So these are kind of the major ways that you're going to talk about your versions of things. And when we talk about version control systems, it is to control the code as it goes through those versions, as you make a new feature, or as you move from development to testing, or move into production, or whatever the case may be. The main purpose of all version control systems, and there are lots of kinds of version control systems, but the main purpose to all of them is to track changes made to files in directories. So the files and the directories themselves. So remember, software is all files and directories. That is absolutely true with this too. This is just tracking the changes. So there are tons of different kinds. There's this old version. There was a local control system is what they called it. And it was rigid in a lot of ways, and you couldn't share it with people. Then they came up with a centralized version control system, which was more shareable, but only one person could be working on the code at a time, and there was collisions and things like that. And now the modern way of doing it is called a distributed version control system. Not super important. We know all these differences. Just know that we are using a distributed version control system, and the main difference there is that a whole bunch of people can grab the same code and work on it, and then commit it back to some central repository through this version control system, and make sure there's no collisions. So these distributed version control systems are the ways big companies can do what they do. The way like Netflix can have all these developers maintaining and developing their software all the time, and you can just go watch a movie whenever you want to. It's through this model of distributed version control systems. One in particular is very, very popular, and the one that we're going to be using specifically is called GET, and stands for Global Information Tracker. And it's also kind of a play on words as in get, like go get something, because that's really what you're doing. You're going and getting code and you're saving it. So we're going to talk about that specific version control system, and we're going to use it. It's very common. It's very, 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 very common. Widely used everywhere. Pretty much a standard. I think I know that there are lots of other versions out there that are available, but like I don't know anybody that uses them. Git is really the one. So why would we generally want to use one, right? So the purpose, again, is tracking changes made to our files and directories. But the idea here is that we've used the analogy of building a physical building and to explain the process of developing and designing our web application, right? We talked about the physical space and then delineating inside of it and whatnot. Version control systems give us the ability to add the layer of time to our development process. So we could take a snapshot basically of our entire project at different times. So right now, for example, we have our code working to a certain degree. If we want to change it and develop experimental features, a version control system, which I'll show you how it does it, gives us the ability to break off a full set of our code and mess around with it and break it entirely if we want to, without destroying the core function we can go back to and still run our code without, there's like a version that's safe, basically is what it's doing. It also lets you back it up in a cloud provider, which we'll get to, hopefully. This makes sure that you have the right version of the code being used, right? Out of all those versions we talked about, both the major versions and then usually this is talking about development versus testing and things like that. That's typically how you see it, but it can also be the major versions that we talked about before. And allows us to collaborate with others. Again, this is a distributed version control system. And we're going to talk about how you collaborate with others. Again, it's a very, very important if you're trying to build your portfolio and come into this as a profession. We're going to go through one of the ways to do that through things like GitHub. We'll talk about what that is. But it's also very good for managing and developing projects of all sizes. So I mentioned big, huge places like Netflix or whatever. This is good for projects your size, even if you don't want to be a professional developer and you're just going to run like small scripts to clean up files on your computer or something like that. Version control systems are really handy to keep track of the changes you make and make sure you don't break anything that you got working. So I use them. I use Git. Literally everything I do, I put into a Git repository because there's no reason not to. And then if you get into big organizations, you can set up some really sexy stuff like this continuous integration and development, or CI/CD. You might see that at places where it's like an automated process of people are developing changes and then they send it off to this version control system and it triggers a bunch of things, runs through some tests, and your live code is updated in the production side, wherever that may be. Again, something you're probably not going to do in smaller projects, but it's worth knowing that this is what version control systems can do. They can do the CI/CD pipeline, and that's something that's worth looking into as sort of a more complex next step from here. All right, so Git specifically, the global information tracker. Again, I'm gonna keep this on the screen. It tracks changes made to files and directories. Some key concepts here is that we talk about things in terms of repositories that contain files and directories that you want to track. So it's just called a Git repository. It's files and directories, just like every other piece of software. We'll see that it's making a directory, but we refer to them as repositories. And repositories you can think of as all of your project code. So we're going to make a repository in our root my site level project folder or directory, so we can save all the code that we've made, every file that we've made, and the whole thing. And that's called a repository. Again, this allows for storage and cloud providers, so you're not restricted to using one machine. Other people get it from other machines. You can get it from other machines, so it's another reason to use these things. We're going to use GitHub as the example one. It's very widely used, but there are tons of other ones like GitLab and Bitbucket and OneDev, and just like there's a huge list that goes on forever. And you'll see that some of these have Git in the name of the company. That's got nothing to do with it being related to Git. Git is a separate technology. You don't have to sign up for any of these guys at all to use Git. It's a totally separate thing. We're going to use it without GitHub first, use it in our own local project, and then we'll talk about how you can collaborate with it. So them using Git in their name like GitHub and GitLab is just kind of marketing, confusing you with the technology itself, which you don't have to use any of these guys to use Git as a standalone thing. So any questions? I guess there's more of those. Codeberg, don't forget about them. Any questions about this conceptually of what version control systems are doing and why we would mess with them?
I had one quick question. I'm trying distributed. I'm trying to remember Napster. Was that like one of the first like distributed, because people would have their system accessible by the internet, and then you would grab the bits of the songs or the movies, and then you couldn't get busted because you didn't steal a song.
Like the whole song? Yeah, no, I remember that.
Yeah.
That was the good old days of internet piracy. Yeah, no, I I don't know actually. I never thought about it that way. I don't
Isn't it a
think
distributed
so.
network? I mean,
I
it's
mean,
like
it
your,
is.
yeah.
Called a Tor.
Yeah, but that's a
Tor, yeah.
different thing. Yeah.
BitTorrent was the thing, yeah.
Yeah, bitter.
Yeah.
BitTorrent, yeah. Huh.
Yeah, I mean
Okay.
that's I think it's gonna be slightly different underlying technology, but similar. Yeah. Like there's a close way that works, but yeah.
Well, I was just imagining when you're talking about like if Netflix has multiple servers that this thing is accessible on, and then I'm
Yeah.
pinging it to watch, James Bond, it's like, and then like they're rebuilding this server that I just happened. So, but I'm grabbing pieces from the different ones.
So
I think
it's not quite like that. No, yeah. So I'm glad we follow that through, because it's not quite like that. It's more like all of Netflix, like their website and their interface and everything that exists as Netflix on their tech end is going to be existent in a Git repository somewhere. So everybody that works there as a front end developer, whenever they change the look or feel or do any of the interactions and make it different, they'll pull down that section of it without affecting the main code that runs, that like their website runs on and their apps run on and things like that, right? So that you can still interact with it, the public can still interact with it. They don't have to say, oh, sorry, the site's down for maintenance. They don't have to do that. They could pull pieces of the code out into other places using Git and work on that code and make changes and break it to their heart's content without affecting their main code base that's still operating the same way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
different than what I was conceiving.
Yeah, yeah. It's not the same as like servers, or like when we did the CDN delivery of Bootstrap. And that was kind of more what you're talking about, where it's just distributed out on different servers, and depending on which server is closest to you, it gets served from there. Yeah, this is different. Yeah, this is like the full set of your code being saved someplace that we can then take that whole thing out, run different copies, and like make changes without affecting the base.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. Yeah.
Sure, sure. Any other conceptual questions? All right. Cool. So that is the end of the slides. I'm going to slide over and talk about some of the resources that we have in here and just sort of talk again conceptually, but also more specifically mechanically of the commands we're going to walk through with Git. And so in the free coding resources, we go on to version control down here on the left-hand side. Git's the only one we listed, but there's a couple of things in here. There's the actual Git site itself, so you can set that up on your own thing, and it's got good documentation. There's GitHub, again, which we talked about because it's popular, it's useful. But then there's this cheat sheet that I wanted to use and show you that it's here. It says the simple guide, no deep shit, and that is absolutely what this is. This is by far the simplest place to start, and I use this as a reference for the longest until I got really, really used to it. This is a great place to go to remember which commands do what and which process you go through to run Git operations. And it's also a really good explanation of it conceptually. So I'm going to use this to kind of walk through piece by piece what we're going to be doing. So first thing here is setup. Again, if you want to set it up in your local environment, this is how you would do it. We can skip this because in Python Anywhere, it's already set up. There was a step to link GitHub if you went through that pre-work. That's, again, optional. You don't have to do that part to get Git to work. We'll go through this creating a new repository and checking out a repository steps later. I want to go down here to this workflow because I think this is a really good diagram that shows what it is we're doing. And we're going to keep these steps in mind because these are the commands that we're going to run. So our working directory over here on the left is, in our case, the My Site directory. It's the top level project directory where all of our code is, and that's where our project really is. And so we're working there, we're making changes, and at some point, we want to save those changes, right? So like now, for example, we have all of our CRUD operations written. We have some front end basically built. So we're ready to save it as a project. So what we would do is we would run the add command in Git, and it'll take all of the things that we didn't tell it to ignore. We'll go over ignoring things specifically in a minute, but anything we don't tell it to ignore, it by default takes everything in this working directory and adds it to this, what's called a stage. Right? It moves this to the index. It's a staging environment. And it lists to you which directories, which files it's going to be adding and saving into the repository. So it gives you a chance to look those over and make sure the ones you want to add, you can remove anything that you don't want to add to this commit or anything like that, right? And just gives you a chance to look at it. And then commit is actually saving it to this record, basically. It's like a snapshot and recording it in time in your log. And head is a pointer that says like now. Head is kind of the now moment that is pointed at. The current snapshot of your code is where the head is. So this is the process that you're going to go through when you develop using Git. You do your changes, you do your work in your working directory, develop whatever thing you need to develop. And when you're satisfied with it, you add those changes into the staging environment where the index is going to be. And then once you're satisfied that you have all the things you need to save, you commit those changes into a place in your log. And it'll be saved at the head. Is this generally making sense? Again, this should become more clear as we go through these actual commands. But here they are for reference. We're going to do these in a minute, but this is basically it too. You just write git add and then the file name, or you could say git add everything. I use a period for everything. I'm not actually sure if an asterisk works, but you can give it a shot. And then you have to give it some sort of message to go into the history log. And we'll go through this a few times. It becomes very simple, or it becomes very repetitive because you do the same three commands every time. Pushing changes, we'll skip that for now. I want to come down here to branching. So understanding this concept before we get going hands-on is really key. So this is a pretty good picture of what is being done here and how we can think about this. So this little diagram down at the bottom, we have this bottom line that's labeled master, and that's actually an outdated term. About 10-ish years ago, there was a big movement to stop using slavery terminology like master and call everything main as the main Git repository. So when we start in Python Anywhere, it's still going to be called master, and I'll show you how to rename it. Very easy to do. But if you get Git on your local device, it's going to default to main as the main branch, and everybody calls it main now. But you will see in older documentation, it listed as master. So the main branch here is our main code as it exists. And think of this as a timeline left to right. So the arrow pointing off to the right, this is like time passing, right? So we're thinking about the addition of time to our space. So we have a space of our website, and let's say right over here on the left is where we are now. We have everything fully functioning. And let's say that we wanted to take our to-do app and change it. Like I said, I keep encouraging you to build from here. And let's say we want to make it like a food ordering app, like DoorDash or something like that. So where we're creating a task now, we want to inject an API call to go, like, I don't know, Toast or something like that, that does point of sale at restaurants and send the order that people put into a form on our site to the restaurant. So we want to change our site to do that. So we want to change it from a to-do app to do that. We'll make a branch here for that new feature. That's what feature X is. So at this point where it splits, the code's the same. And then when there's split, there's two different sets of code existing in two different like dimensions, you know what I mean, at the same time, basically. And we can make all the changes we want to feature X, and it doesn't affect anything down here on our bottom main branch at all. So if for whatever reason we had to do something else, like a user found a bug, let's imagine it's a live program somewhere, not our to-do list app. It's Netflix, like we were talking about before. So we found a bug and we want to fix it. We could do like another branch off of here and do the little hot fix and then merge it back in, and it won't affect what's going on in this feature branch. So these two things are totally separate from each other right here. And then once we've developed our feature down here to this next bend and we're good with it, we've tested it, it works, we're ready to what's called merge it back into the main branch. And then here at the merge, and from here over, it becomes one thing and it's one set of code. So this branch still exists, but now they have the same code in them at this point. Is this making sense to everybody? Any questions about this?
Yeah, I got a question. So
Sure.
if you're working on a feature, let's say you're trying to make a change and how do I word this? Would it affect that feature while you're working on it, or is it gonna kind of like you're working in a separate space and then it adds it later?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think it'll become more clear as we walk through and actually do it. But
Okay.
any work you do on one branch is not going to affect the other branch unless you merge them.
So
Does that make
that's
sense?
where I get all the questions because like I'm thinking of like if I work on a Word doc and I pass it to, my coworker and it's
Mhm.
going to say it's going to have them go through and look at what the changes are and accept them or reject them.
Mhm.
Like what happens if and it's likely at this point in my career, I screwed something up on my feature X
Yeah.
and I'm just curious about the process of what the merge looks like there.
Yeah,
There's got to
absolutely.
be
And there's
some
and
testing involved, right?
there is
Yeah.
absolutely. And
Okay.
that's yeah. So it's really it's kind of on you to do that testing. But what this does is it shows you, and we'll go through that of what's called a pull request. So like when you make a change and send it up to somebody, they're supposed to review your code and they can set these branches next to basically compare the differences, and it'll show line by line what the differences are, and then you can decide if it's a merge you want to make, right? And if it's your own project, Greg, to your question, if it's a small project and it's just you doing it, you know, that's just like editing your own work. You run the risk of there's no automatic check to make sure like you can put broken code into the merge and break all of your code. There's nothing that's really going to stop you. But
So it's
the
very similar to that Word document,
it
like
is.
editing process or
Yeah, you
review.
can think of
Yeah,
it a
yeah.
lot like that of because again, if you go into a Word document like in Google, they have versions that you can look back at, right? And you can name versions and you can save them and all that kind of stuff. And you can do suggested edits instead of doing committed edits. You can kind of think of that as similar to this. This is very sim that's very similar. Does that make sense though? Does that kind of answer your question, Mike?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, yeah, kind of. I know it's not. This is serious. This is something that's definitely confusing, but it does come home a little bit when we start using it. So
For
we'll
sure.
again we'll go through these commands of basic branching, and we'll make a change in our code, and I'll show you that it like just exists in the two branches at once. So you can go between the two branches and see the change that you've made, and then go back to the original code that's unchanged and still use it the way that it was. And that's kind of the beauty of this is that you can make changes without worrying about breaking what you've already done.
Mm.
So and this is also again like let's say you do that scenario Greg was asking when you do a feature, you do some tests, but then you mess something up and you merge broken code and you actually break everything here with Git or a version control system, you could roll back to a version before you did the merge to any point in the timeline that you committed and saved. Like all these commits here are saved in your history. Every time you commit, there's it's like a snapshot in history that you can go back to and grab it. So make sure you commit it when it works. And it's like checkpoints that you're saving in a video game or something like that, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
Cool. All right. So then that's pretty much all that I wanted to cover was understanding basic branching and merging, and we're going to go through it as an example and go through these commands and kind of get hands-on with it to see how it works. There's a lot more here to reference, like how to update things from repositories that are remote and like different tagging and logging. And it's good stuff. We're not going to get that deep into it. We'll go even shallower on this no deep shit thing. Also on this page though, there's a shorter version with the actual commands written out, which is very, very handy. So with a little diagram that shows kind of that same diagram with the commands at each point to sort of help visualize where it is and what you're doing as you're doing these things. So that is that. Let's go over to Python Anywhere and get hands-on with this stuff. I'm going to close those things up. We'll use that in a minute. And let's go into a bash console like we have many times before. And we're going to, at first, we're going to use the same project that we've been using. And we're going to add to our my site without adding, changing any of the code in the my site thing. We're just going to add this Git repository so that we have a way to save it and we can develop further from there. So I'm going to show you the process of how we set this up and go through these commands. So first thing we want to do is we want to go into our project directory the way we always have. Let's start our virtual environment, even though we're not going to be doing anything directly with it. We'll go through that for habits. So source, virtual environment name, activate, and then we're going to change directories into my site. So now we're at top level my site directory. And what we need to do is if we just type in git, I'm going to do -- version. This is a good idea just to make sure you have it installed in your system. So if you're like on your home computer, not in Python Anywhere, just want to make sure that you got it. This works on pretty much anything. So -- version, check that you got it. And there's our semantic versioning. So this is 2.25.1. And we know we can start doing things. So one of the first things that we usually do is look at the status that we have. And so I'm going to do this really fast. So there's one way to check that you have is git version. Another one is to try to run a git command. And if we do that before we set up a repository, so we have git, but if we try to run a command, we'll get this thing that says, oh, that failed, right? So womp womp, failure. So we have to actually initialize what's called a repository. So the first command that we're going to run is going to be git init. And this is real common way to start a lot of things. And it'll tell us that it initialized an empty git repository and it tells us where. And it says it's just a directory as .git. So we could see that by doing ls and do -a, because that'll give us the full list of everything that's in there, even the hidden directories, which are the ones led by dots. And there it is, just a directory. So we put this directory in our top level project directory, and now we have it there. Great. So now we can start running commands. So now if I do git status, like I did before, that broke it and said, oh, we can't do that, it should give me this big list of things. And it'll say first on branch master. So there we go. It's our older version that we should rename. It says no commits yet. We haven't saved anything. Then it says untracked files. And it says use git add and then file name. It even tells you what to do. And then it has a list of all the files and directories that are not added. Right? So what we're going to do is we're going to add things to our commit and we're going to save it. But first, what we need to do is look at this right here, this db SQLite3. What is this file? First of all,
I don't know, but it popped up in our last class.
it did. It did. This is a pretty important one. Anybody remember?
It's database stuff. It's got SQL in it, I'm guessing. So
Yeah, good enough. Read what's there. That's perfect. It's our database. So this is the development database that comes standard with Django, right? And so this is an example of the kind of thing that we do not want to save into our version control. So as you can see by default, it grabs everything that's in here. Another thing that we don't want to save is that .env file that we made, because we're going to have sensitive information in there. You have API keys or, passwords to your database and all that kinds of stuff. So there's all kinds of stuff that we're going to want to ignore from our Git repositories now that we have one. So a file that is very, very typical to put in standard is called a .gitignore file. And I sent this out earlier as an example. Email it out. It's in the Discord. If anybody needs it right now, I can, again, drop it in the chat or something like that. But this right here is boilerplate stuff. You get this off of GitHub. I'll show you where you can get them. You can just search for one online, say like a python.gitignore thing. It's kind of specific by the language or framework you're using. So if you're using like Ruby, there'll be a different set of this. But this has specific things in there to ignore, like the pi cache that we ignore from our tree command because it's a bunch of stuff we don't need. Here's our DB SQLite 3 being ignored. And, some other things that are typical for Python. Here's our .env stuff being listed as ignored. So this is just going to be a text file, basically. And we can just take all this stuff out of here, and we're going to have to make a .ignore file in our project alongside, just in that same my site directory. And it'll tell Git to ignore all the stuff that we don't want to use. So I'm just going to copy all this stuff out of here. This is from our project, actually. So like all these things down at the bottom, like this uploads and stuff, I think this is non-standard. That's specific to one of our projects, but everything from this pi r up is like boilerplate stuff. So I'm gonna copy this out. I'm gonna go back into Bash console. Well, let's do this in files so we don't get lost. So we're gonna do this in files, and we're gonna make a new file. So I'm gonna go over to my file GUI real quick, and we'll make sure we put it in the right place.
On my Bash console, I accidentally did a apostrophe A instead of a dash A, and I've got a chevron, and I don't know how to get out of there.
Man, how dare you! So hit Control C, and that should stop any process as a keyboard interrupt. That anytime you get stuck in a Bash console, there should be a way to get out. Does that help?
Okay. Yeah, that worked.
Cool. I was gonna say if that didn't work, then just going out to your consoles, closing it out, killing it, and starting a new one is never a bad plan. But all right, so we're going to go make our git ignore file. So I'm going to go to files, and we're going to go to our top level my site directory. So we're going to be right alongside the .git and the static main and the templates and to do our example.py. Same place our manage.py file is.
Why don't I have example.py? Did
I was
miss
wondering
something?
why I did. I think I must have made that
Okay.
when I was showing an example of somebody and forgot to delete it. So you should not have an example. You should just have a manage.py. We're going to ignore that. Pretend it's not there. Ignore the man behind the curtain. All right. So then we're going to make a dot. Starts with a dot because it's a hidden file. Git ignore, all one word. And when I say new file on that, it should take me into the text editor where I can just paste in the full contents of that file I shared earlier with you all. Again, this is just straight boilerplate stuff for the most part. We'll save that. The most important part is that we have it in the right place so that Git knows where to find it because it's going to look for it. And it's a top level my site directory. Cool. So now back in our Bash console, let's finish up our Git interactions. Clear up this screen a little bit. And now if I do Git status, you see that DB SQLite 3 disappeared, but now we have this git ignore in there. So it's already kind of working. It's already ignoring the stuff that we told it to because it ran that first when I checked it out. It said, is there a git ignore file? Cool. What should we ignore? So it won't even suggest to track stuff that we told it to ignore. But just to be sure, what we're going to do, and also as by way of example, like show how to add one file versus all the files, we're going to run the process of adding something and then committing it and saving and making our first what is typically called initial commit. And just add our git ignore file to make sure that it ignores everything we want it to ignore, right? So we don't just add everything all. Yeah.
Would you mind throwing that list that you had in the chat because I was trying to get to it, but I couldn't open it. The git ignore all of that.
Yeah.
Is there any way you can throw it in the chat?
Yeah, 1 second.
I just threw it in there.
Oh, did you?
Sweet. Appreciate it.
Cool. Nice. All right. Yeah, cool. So once you got that saved in there, then you should have their status look like this where it pops up. And what we're going to do is we're going to add that now to our staging step in Git. So what we do is we do git add, and then we're going to say specifically what we want to add. So we're going to say .git ignore. And it won't tell us that it did anything. It'll just kind of, spin down like that again. So we'll do git status and see how it's different. And now it'll say that we're still on branch master. We still have no commits, but now we have changes to commit and we have new file .git ignore in green. And then the rest of our files are still untracked. So this is telling us that this is the only file that's set up into our index area. So it's the only thing that's going to be saved if we commit now. Everything else will still be unsaved and untracked, which is what we want. So clear this up. Let's do the next command. So now we know that's our status. So we're going to do git commit -m. which stands for message, I think. It's going to be the message as a string, so double quotation marks. And then this is supposed to be something descriptive. It's usually project dependent, right? So like whatever you want to put in there is what you're going to do. Oh, actually, wait. We need to stop. If we all do this, it's probably going to break on you. I forgot. You all have to do one more step before we do this. So you don't throw an error. Let's do this real quick. There's a command, since if this is your first time doing it, you have to set up your username and your email address to tell Git who you are. So when you make a commit, it can say that you're the author of that commit. It won't take an anonymous commit. So if we try running this commit command without doing this step, it's going to throw an error for y'all that will be confusing and annoying. So let's do this first step. So we do git space config space -- global, and then user.name, and then as a string, whatever your name is. I'm not going to run this. I've already set mine, and I don't want to reset it. But so just put in, your username, whatever you want yourself to be referred to as. And then once you run that, you do that same git config -- global and user.email, and then just plain text, not quotation marks, just put in some email address. And again, it doesn't have to be a real email address. It doesn't have to be a real user. You're not signing up for anything. This is just something to put into the log to say that you're the author of the commit that you made. So use your email and do like, I don't know, example.
I got an error. Key does not contain a section global.
Did you do --
Yes.
and space like git config -- global? Does that work for anybody else? Everybody getting that error?
It worked for me.
Work for you? Okay.
Maybe I put a space between the two dashes in the global.
Yeah,
might
that could
be
do it. Yeah. All right.
Does work mean that you just got a VNV my site $?
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of confirmation. And then the real confirmation will come here when we run the commit. If it doesn't say who are you or like tell us who you are, then it definitely worked. So we'll do this check here in a second. All right. So once you've done that, you've set up your username or email address. We're going to do git commit, and we're going to add our first commit. So git commit space -m to send the message. And the first one is initial commit is the standard. That's like just about everybody's first commit is called initial commit. Again, as recall, we're doing just our git ignore file. And when we run that, again, if you did set your username and email address and don't get an error, you should get this thing that says, root commit, initial commit, and it has this little number thing in there, this E6, E64. That's the ID of the commit. So if you roll back in history, you want to find an earlier commit, that's how you'll reference it. And then it tells you specifically what it did. So one file changed. The insertions are the number of rows. So each row is an insertion. And then it said it created this file. And so now we have that file saved, and we have our first commit. So now if we do, like, say, git log, it'll show us the author. There's me with my email address. Don't steal my identity. And then the date that I did it, and then the little note that I put in there. So this is our first commit.
Yeah, Jeff, I'm not getting that. I'm still coming up with that red list that says I have the initial commit, and then it says on branch master, but it's coming up with that red list, and I don't have the little yellow master on
Oh
my
yeah, if you did, so wait, you do git status and it still comes up like this?
on branch
Yeah, on branch master untrack files.
No, mine says initial commit. Right under on branch master, it says it's a space, and then it says initial commit.
Did you commit it?
I mean, I was following along.
Huh.
I'm not sure what maybe, and then mine still says I don't know why, but it still says DB SQLite 3 and git ignore.
It has both of them in there?
Yeah, and I made that file, the get ignore file, and I ran it.
And you saved it. Yeah,
I
you don't
saved
need
it.
to run it. You saved it, right? Okay.
Yeah, I saved it, and I guess I'm supposed to run it, right?
No, no, you're just supposed to add it. So you do the get add dot get ignore.
Okay, I didn't get add get it. Right,
Yeah.
might be why it's
And then right now, the status should be on branch master, and then all the rest of our project files are still red and untracked because we haven't added those yet.
yeah. I'm not sure. I'll have to go back and look at the
I mean, I
video.
can hop over and look at your console if you want. We take a second to do that.
Yeah, yeah. If you can, just so I'm not.
Yeah, man. Yeah, not totally lost. Sure. Everybody else tracking? Anybody else get stuck?
Yeah, I'm stuck. It says, please tell me who you are.
Ah. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you got
Empty identity name.
yeah.
My email wasn't allowed or something.
Okay. On branch master, get commit. Get ignore. Ah, well, here's one problem. This is why your get ignore is not working. You saved it as a comma ignore. So that's an issue. And
Uh,
then I think you'd ran the commit without adding anything. So it just says initial commit because there's nothing. Like I think you have. Hold on, I'm gonna run a command real quick. I'm gonna do get log, and this should show you. Yeah. So it didn't actually work. See that?
okay.
So you didn't. So you skipped the first step of adding something, and you just committed. So that's an issue. And I'm not sure if your email is going to work like this as a string. It needs to go in just as, like, without the quotation
Oh,
marks.
without the quotation. Okay.
Yeah. It's just plain text. And so
This
then
one I put mine in as quotation marks around it and it worked fine.
it worked fine. Okay, cool. Then you shouldn't worry about it. Yeah. All right. But yeah, you definitely need to change this to be a dot get ignore, not a comma get ignore.
Okay.
And
All
then
right. Let me.
yeah, and then do get add dot get ignore like you did here, but it's just it didn't find it because it was mislabeled.
And I can change that from. I can edit that from there, or I would have to just make a new file and.
You can do it with just move. You just do the move command. So you could just do mv and then the name of the file you want to change, and then the new file like this. You do mv wait, uh, comma get ignore. You want me to just run it for you?
Yeah, if you can, just so I don't
Sure.
hold everybody up.
Yeah, man. This is like so. You just do this move command to rename something here,
Okay.
and then it should be. We'll clear it. Well, I'll keep that up for you in case you want to look at it. And then if we do get status now, it says no commits yet. And
Yep.
here's your get ignore, and the SQL 3 disappeared.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you want to run the get add and go through that, and then do the initial commit again, and you can just press your up arrows because you already put the commands in. So if you just press the up arrows and pull those commands back up, you don't have to retype them.
Okay. And I'm just doing the
So you do get add first.
get add and then dot get ignore.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
It's not even letting me click on it right now.
Oh, maybe because I took over. Let me get out of your console.
Okay.
Sorry. I mean, they're probably just hemming you up. All right, I'll just go back to where I was. Yeah, here's mine. Okay. I'm back here. Let me know if that worked for you. Cool. You're working on getting that cut up. It should just be the get add, then the get commit with the thing. Let's rename the branch. So there's a couple of useful things here that we're going to use when we branch things anyway. We're going to use this branch command. But it also will rename things for us. So as you can see here in yellow, we have the name of the branch that we're on, in addition to our virtual environment. Again, these are two totally separate things. We could go around directories and our Git repository would stay on. We could deactivate our virtual environment. Our Git repository would stay open like this if we were in it. So what we're going to do is rename this thing. We're going to use Git to let us know that we're doing Git, and then we'll type in branch. And this command, if we run it just by itself with nothing, we hit enter at this point, That'll just give us a list of the branches that we have. Right now we only got one, but it'll list them in green as the current one. It has a little asterisk next to it. So if you have several, it'll be in this list, but white, and we'll see that in a minute when we make another branch. But to rename it, we're going to do get branch -m. So the M flag to change the name. And then we give the name of the branch that we want to change, so master, and then the name that we want it to be, which typically, again, by convention, people will expect it to be called main. They'll expect your main branch to be called main. So you see that the no confirmation given, but what's in these parentheses changed from master to main. So that's the way you can rename branches if you ever needed to. Very simple branch command. And again, standard to call your main branch main is what everybody's going to expect it to be called. So since one of the reasons of these things is to collaborate with other people, it's best to follow convention. All right. So the other thing we do with branching is the actual branching. So let's do an example of that and kind of show this in action, what we do when we actually make changes to stuff. So first, let's add everything else from our project and do another commit real quick. So we got all these files and everything that's being untracked. Let's add all those now. We have our branch name properly, and we're going to start our project from the point that it is now without making any changes to it. So we're just going to do get add and then period. And that's just going to be like everything. So I'll run that. It'll take a second, think about it. It's going to be like, yeah, I don't know if I like you enough to do that, but it will give me no confirmation. And then when I do get status, it's going to give me this really long list. Let me zoom out a little bit, see if I can get it on a page. Probably not. But this is all of our project files. So this is everything. I'm going to scroll up to the top to show an example that it is ignoring the things, and we're just going to verify in this staging thing that we have what we want to, and the things that we wanted to ignore have been ignored. So if you recall, we have our .env file, which we do not want to put in version control at any point because it's going to have sensitive information like passwords and API keys, stuff like that, is in this directory, this my site directory, alongside our settings.py, the top level URLs, and the WSGI that comes standard. And you don't see it listed there, right? So my site, this is the full directory, .env is not listed, so we're solid. If it was, this tells you how to pull a file out of this staging area. So if you think about our working directory, this is now in staging. It gives us this list so we can double check and look and make sure that we're ready to commit all this stuff again, so we don't commit anything sensitive that we don't want to save into our repository. All right, so we did get add. Now we're going to do get commit -m and then something descriptive. So there's no real standard at this point. You're going to follow your project. If it's just yours, whatever you want, but it has to have some kind of label in here. If you forget the M flag and the string that follows it, it'll like take you into a text editor and make you do a comment. So you've got to put something in here. So we just be like, I don't know, added project files or whatever. And it'll do that, and it'll give confirmation and say create mode for all the files and directories that we created. So I'm going to clear that up so the screen's not so jumpable. And then if we do get status, it should say on branch main, nothing to commit, working tree clean. Everybody able to get to this point? Yeah, seeing some affirmative nodding and thumbs ups or thumbs up. It's like sergeant's major. Which were we pluralizing? Okay, cool. All right, so this is where you're going to be most of the time when you start, right? So you get started. You're going to have your working branch. You're going to be on some sort of branch, and it's going to say, it should say it's clean, nothing to commit. And we're going to do a new feature. So let's go through branching, make a change, and then we can look at it and go through merging and see how that goes, because it's really pretty straightforward once you get going on it. So let's start by making a new branch. So we'll do get, I'm sorry, not branch. That would be too easy. We use the command checkout to move between branches and to make new branches. So it's get space checkout, and then the B flag to let it know that we're going to make a new branch. So get space checkout space -B, and then the name of our new branch. So this could be literally whatever you want. It does not matter, but let's just go with feature X because that sounds like fun. So we're going to make our feature X branch. And when we do that, it says switch to a new branch feature X, and what in the parentheses has changed. So at this point, if you think back to that diagram, that we've just split, and our code in the main branch and our feature X branch, it's exactly the same. No difference. They're doing the
I
same.
got feature Y is not a valid branch name.
Uh-oh. Did you put the B flag in here?
Yeah.
Make sure you spelled it all right, because that sounds like you did the checkout command and it's looking for the name of a branch that doesn't exist. Because checkout is how you move between branches once you have more than one. Like if I want to go back to main, I would do get checkout main, and now it'd be a main. And I do get checkout the feature X, it takes me back. But if I do get checkout something else, it's going to say, oh, that doesn't match. I don't know what that is.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know why it's not saying that the valid branch name. Got the -B. I just had to go with Y instead of X, but I don't think that would make a
All right.
difference.
I guess your system doesn't like feature X as a branch name. Okay, so this is going to be a very thorough branch that we're going to do tons of changes to. It doesn't matter what you call it, man. It's an arbitrary name. So as long as you get to a new branch, whatever the name may be. All right, now let's do a
it
simple
Didn't
change.
get to a new branch though. It just said it's not a valid branch name.
Were you not able to do it at all?
Yeah, it just
This is called feature Y?
yeah.
Okay, but you are on a new branch, right?
No, I'm not in a new branch. I'm still in main.
Ah. Are you only hopping your thing and see what's going on?
Sure.
All right, let's have a look. Take over your console. Just invading everybody's consoles. Yeah, you can't have spaces
What's
in the name.
Oh,
So
you
like
can't?
feature -X or -Y is that's gonna be your issue.
Okay.
It's got to be one single
There we
name,
go.
like a variable
That
name. That work? All right, cool. All right, so now we're on this branch. Let's make some kind of change. I'm going to use V to do the change. Hopefully it doesn't trip everybody up. You're welcome to do this in the GUI if you like. It's just much faster to do it this way. So I'm going to use the built-in text editor here to just add something to some place. It's a fairly arbitrary difference that we're going to make. But I'm just going to add something to our base.html. So I do V and then the name of the file I want, so templates base.html. And it should open this up. And here's our code. And if I hit the letter I enter insert mode down at the bottom. And I can now type, make changes, do all the things that we normally do. So after my end block, I'm just going to add something new. This doesn't matter because I'm not actually going to look at the site. I'm just going to say I'm new. I don't know what to do. Which is a quote from the cinematic masterpiece Joe Dirt. If you've never seen it, I highly recommend it. All right, so I added something new to this file. Again, an arbitrary change. The change itself does not matter. We could imagine that, again, we walked through setting up something more complex, like we added a new API call or something like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the escape key to exit insert mode. I'm going to write :WQ. That's how W stands for write, Q stands for quit. So I'm going to save this change into my file. And this is the place where people usually get lost. So I hit escape to get out of the insert mode. I'm going to pause here for a second, make sure everybody's with me before I move on, because this is easy to get stuck here. Now I've got :WQ down here at the bottom. I'm going to save this file. Okay, so now I'm back here. I have made a change. And so if we do get status, it's going to say that we're on branch feature X, and we've modified this file. Cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to commit this change. And say we're happy with the development we've done, and we've done all the things we need to do. So we're going to go through that same process of adding this change now to our feature X branch of our repository. So we're going to do git add, and this time I'm just going to do all because I know everything in there that I want. Let's just assume it's several files. I'm just going to add everything because this is the standard that we go through. And then we'll say git commit -m space open quotation marks, and then I'll just say, I don't know, updated the copy because we added a new paragraph. And this will tell you what files were changed, so you don't have to list the files that you change in your commit message. And you try to keep it short because it's going to be in your log, right? So again, it can be whatever you like, but git space commit space -m and then some sort of string. And it'll tell you this is what we did on feature X, and this is what we made. So we changed the file, we inserted something. So now if I just look at that templates, I'll use cat templates based on HTML. I can see that paragraph that I added is in there. So there's that paragraph. Right? Now, if I do git checkout main and go check out my main branch and do that same command, the cat template, and have a look, it will not be there. That paragraph tag is not there. So this is what I mean by the entire code exists on the main and the feature branch in two different states. So our main branch hasn't changed. We haven't done anything differently to this yet, so that paragraph doesn't exist. But if I go back to my feature X branch and I read that file, that paragraph does exist. Everybody tracking this? Is it making sense? Good. Any questions on what we did on this branch and what we've done with the split of the branch? All right. Cool. So now let's assume that, again, we've done all of our work. We've done all our tests. We've got everything that we wanted to do. We've committed on this new branch. We just got to merge it. So to merge, we are going to go back to the branch that we want to merge this into. We have to be on that branch. So we have to check out main again, be on our main branch. And then we're going to do git merge. And then the name of the branch we want to merge. Feature X. And again, you want to be really sure that you want to do this because it's not going to give you any like, hey, you sure you want to do that? It's just going to do that. It's going to do the command. So if you merge bad code, it's not going to tell you. If you merge something that breaks your code base, it won't tell you. You'll just break everything. It'll tell you what it did. It'll tell you the changes, the insertions, and all that sort of stuff. But now, if I'm on my main branch, but now if I similarly read, I'll just press up. If I just read that file again, have a look at what's there, that paragraph tag is there. So now I still have two distinct branches that exist, but since I've merged them, we'll just do git branch to show the list. So we still have our feature X branch. It still exists. I can still check that branch out, and I could do more work to it. But now that we've merged it, at this point in time, it's all in the same place. Here, I can show you with git log. I'm going to do this little flag one line to keep it a little bit compact. But this shows you, here's the entry in the log, in the repository. This shows you where the head is pointed to, where main is, and where feature X is, are all three in the same place. Because we merged it. So right now, everywhere you go, the code is the same. This making sense? Any questions?
So when you merge it, are you overwriting or?
Kind of, yeah. Yeah, in a sense. Like, so you overwrite those files that you changed, you overwrite them in your main repository branch, but only at this point in time. So like think of these as like points in time. These are little hash marks over these little, IDs for these things.
Okay.
So you did overwrite the stuff that was in those files, but only at this point in time. That makes sense? So
Yeah.
if you want to like roll back, you roll back to this point in time and the file is no longer written that way.
Makes sense.
Making sense? Cool. So that is the most basic way of using Git for local. Again, we didn't have to do anything with GitHub. We didn't have to go anywhere and log in anything. This is freely available, and you can use this in all your projects. Highly encourage you to do it. The other piece of this, though, is the collaborative piece. And that's the other thing that I wanted to kind of run through with the last little bit of class, is go through how to collaborate using GitHub and show what that opens the door to do if you know how to run Git and do these sorts of things. You can grab other people's code, full programs from places, and pull them down and run them and make changes, right? So you don't have to start with a code base that's your own code base. You can grab some code from someplace else, run it through Git, and pull it down. So let's do that. That sounds like fun, right? Let's get out of here and do a totally different project alongside of this one. So we can actually put down our main project for now. I'm going to do the deactivate command to get out of our virtual environment. And then I'm just going to hit CD with nothing to move myself back up to my tilde environment out of my MySite directory. And you see when I did that, I didn't have to do anything to get out of my Git repository. It just disappeared. So now we're just like starting over, right? So now we're here. So let's go through the other portion of Git. So that was like the version control system piece of it, how you control the versions of your own projects and things like that, different states and time, and how you save them. The other thing that we could do is collaborate with others. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to GitHub. And I'm going to log in. And hopefully it actually lets me. Of course, I have several factor authentication. Let me get logged in here. And then we will show, we went on GitHub briefly for something earlier, but we're going to go around a little bit more and show kind of the cool stuff that we can do with it. 3. And if you all did the signing up sort of pre-work stuff earlier and hooked it up with Python Anywhere so that you can follow along, I definitely encourage you to, because this is one of those pieces that if you want to do this professionally, GitHub is where you want to be, and you want to be involved in these sorts of things, right? So when you log in and you come in here, you're going to be presented with a list of Git repositories. So these are mine over here on the left that are mine, or ones that I'm following from other people. Here's something I'm following. This is a friend of mine runs this project here. But all of these, doesn't matter what they are, anything that's on GitHub, if you go here, if you go to like my friend's project, it's their entire code base. It's all their files and directories. And you can quite literally just go into these things and read them, the actual code, and just have a look at it. And this is true for anything that is open source, right? So this is the source code, and it's open, meaning we can get to it. So open source, if you heard the term, does not mean free. It doesn't mean that it's just like non-commercial. It means that the code is accessible in some way, that you can actually read and access the source code, right? So that's what these things are. And that's what Git kind of lets you do. You can get into people's code and interact with it. You can see what it is. So in ours, we have this bootcamp poker game that I would encourage everyone to find, and you can use as an example to interact with and play around with. And I'm going to use it as the example here. But this as a thing, here, I can drop this here, hold up. I can drop this link in the chat again, like the other one, if we want. Bam. There we go. But this is true of our overall project as well. It's open source. It's up here, and you can run that as well. But when you look at projects and you look at things over here on the right-hand side, it'll say like what languages it's written in. So this is pure Python, 100% Python, but it'll list the other things that are in there. And this has, our git ignore. It has a license, which is a fairly standard thing to include in here. This uses, again, an open source license so that you can take this, do whatever you like with it. But the specifics of how you can use it will be in that license. So if you're not sure, projects will pretty much always have this if they're public, and you can read that and see, okay, cool, can I use this, can I not? Your README is going to be what's displayed down here. It's just written in a markup language. And then there's a main.py, and then this is just the actual code. The actual Python code is just in here. You can read it, do whatever you like. You can actually make, if it's yours, you can make changes directly in here and edit the files if you like. But we're not going to do that. We're going to pull this down. I'm going to show you what you can do is actually pull this stuff down and make a copy for yourself to use and run any of these things, right? So we have all of our projects on here. We're doing this bootcamp poker game. What we're going to do is once we're here at this bootcamp poker game repository, so we're in the repository online, there's a whole bunch of stuff to do. But this green code button is what I'm looking for. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. No. So what we're going to do first is we're going to fork it. So the code button is for when we want to just pull it down straight. If it's your own repository and you're just moving things back and forth between online and your local, you're just going to what's called clone. And we'll go through that step next. But if you want to contribute to somebody else's project, which I do, again, encourage you to do with this project as a test, you're going to want to fork it first. So this up here in the top where it says fork, you're going to make a copy for yourself. So you hit fork, and it's going to say create a new fork. And it's going to say fork a copy of this repository. And then you can change the name if you want to. And I apparently already have a fork of this in my own personal one, so I'll just fork it here. Well, no, that's probably not going to work. I already have one. I didn't erase my one from before. Uh-oh. Hang on a second. Let me get rid of my old repository. Because that shouldn't be the case. So you have a whole bunch of repositories. So this, again, is once you start doing this a lot, you're going to need to use this as a place that people can see the work you've done and they can interact with your repositories. And there's a way to build a profile out that people can then look at and say, hey, what does this person do as a coder? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go delete my repository so I can start over and go through all these steps with you. This is gonna tell me, oh, don't do that. That's very bad. I do want to delete this repository. It's gonna say, oh, there might be some bad effects. Don't do it. Or be sure before you do it. But I'm gonna do it. It's gonna maybe put in the name. Again, this is a step none of you should have to do since I forgot to do this before class. For shame. All right, now we don't have that. Now I should be able to go back to where I was. Wait, there we go. Now I have clicked fork. Now my fork name is available, Bootcamp Poker Game. So if you click fork on that thing and you're following along, this is where it should take you. And it's going to say an opportunity to give you a description. And say copy the main branch only. Again, if there are several branches, you can copy them all, but we're just going to copy the main branch for now. So when I create fork, what it's going to do is make a full copy of that repository from the organizational side to my own personal side. So now this is mine. And it says this branch is up to date with the main one, the one that exists. There's a way to contribute. So there are no commits yet, so we haven't done anything to contribute, but there's a way to contribute to this. And we can sync it to get the most updated stuff. So it's like linked to that other one in a sense, but this is mine to do with as I please. Right. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull this down into Python Anywhere. And we're going to go through the mechanics of pulling stuff down and pushing it back up. And this is the collaborative piece of it. This is how, again, I encourage everyone to do this in their own projects, even if you don't make things public and share them with other people. Is a really good way to back up your stuff in the cloud. This is cloud-based, right? So there's a way to save your stuff redundantly and not lose it if your device goes down. But it's also a way to collaborate with other people, right? So we're gonna go to this code button. And when I click this, there's several options where it says local and code space up here. We're gonna stay on the local tab. It defaults to, it says clone up here. This is the command we're gonna run. And defaults this SSH. And that's the thing that I asked you all to set up before we got to this point. If you didn't get the chance, you could try running it through HTTPS. You may run into problems because this is being sort of outmoded and doesn't work as well. We're going to do the SSH one. But if you didn't get a chance to set that up, it's okay. You can see that as like maybe homework and just kind of watch this part, ask questions. But if you did set this up, follow along. So we're going to copy this to the clipboard. And then we're going to go back to our bash console. And right in here, I'm just going to type git and then the word clone. And then I'm going to paste that repository that I just copied. When I do that, it's going to ask for my passphrase, like always. I can see if I actually remember it and not say it out loud so you don't see my secret code. Okay, cool. Now that we've done that, if I do ls, there should be a Bootcamp Poker Game directory now in my kind of home directory. So if I change directories into that, it says main, so I know I'm in a Git repository. Clear, but if I ls and list what's in here, you see those same files. Well, I guess, hold on, ls-a, so we get our hidden files as well. So we have our Git repository, we have the git ignore file, license, readme, and the main.py. Exactly the same things that are up here. So it just pulled down the full copy of that. And now I have it here. So if I want to run this program, I can. It's just a Texas Hold'em game. And I can zoom out so we can actually see some of this stuff. But it just makes some, fake AI players. Here's me. Here's like a handful of other people that are randomly named. We all have some chips. I could play a hand, and it'll like deal me cards. I got a 9 of spades and an 8 of hearts. It's going to move the action around the table if you're familiar with Texas Hold'em. But this is it. So all I did was I pulled down that repository from GitHub, and now I just run this program here in the same way that we've run programs before. Right? So we don't have to go through this whole thing. It's actually not running all that great. It's all full of bugs. So again, I encourage you all to pull it down, review the code, make contributions, send it back. We'll go through those pieces next. But the idea here is that with those simple commands, just cloning, copying stuff, you can literally pull down any number of things. If it's open source and you can get to the code, you can pull down really complex, like say data analytics software and things like that. That's fully um, commercial use and paid for. If they have an open source version that you can get a hold of, you can now run it for free, and you can modify it any way you want to. And like you have a version of the code that you can run. So that's really the beauty of having GitHub and that collaborative thing. So anybody following along able to do that? Get to this point? Has everyone stopped following along? That's also an option. But
I tried to make the, was it SSH key or whatever it's called?
yeah, did you get
and
hung up there?
It's giving me like errors. Says it's like not a valid key.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, were we
Where
supposed to
I
edit
had that
the?
for a little bit earlier too. I think what I ended up doing was you have to make sure you're finding the key in the right place. So I went to the file itself and picked out the key.
like in your actual directory files up
Yeah.
here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know where it was? Do you remember the directory it was that you got it?
I think it was like home/username, and then you pick the .git file
Uh-huh.
in somewhere in there, if I remember right. Let's see.
Mike, do you have a question?
No, I was just saying, like, I know when I clicked on the link that you had sent us, it was saying like we needed to make a change to the
Yeah.
SSH key, but it didn't give you the option to do that. I was trying to figure it out, but
Hmm.
Yeah. So you just go to the files and you click the .ssh, and then you do the ID rsa.pub. Look in there.
Oh yeah, yeah. .ssh. Yeah, the .pub file is what you're talking about.
Yeah, and then
Yeah,
I found the key there, and
yeah,
that
that's where your
worked.
key should be. Do you have a file like that, Ariel? So .ssh and then ID,
Let me see.
and Mike. So you said that you were able to generate this key or no?
no. So you had sent us an email, I believe, or
Yeah.
I think I was in the Discord. I can't remember where I saw it, but it was like the directions. And when I clicked on that link, it was saying like you needed to edit the key or something that I don't know. But when I tried copying that little SSH key and then tried adding it, it wouldn't even like acknowledge it. It just said I didn't have any saved keys.
Hmm. Oh, on the GitHub side?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Tried adding that key.
That's obnoxious.
Yeah. It
Okay.
was just like you suck.
Okay. All right. Well, if it's still not working at the end, we can have a look at it. We should have plenty of time. I didn't want to go through like opening a pull request and contributing like the last couple of steps. And anybody that wants to try it out and like is stuck on this SSH key thing, we'll have time to get that sorted if you guys are cool with it. But so, all right, anybody that is following along, or if you're just watching for the demo, what we're gonna do is add. If you're stuck on the SSH key, we can get that unstuck after shortly. But what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna make some kind of change and then commit it and push it up to be looked at and try to contribute it back to the main branch is kind of or the main repository. So I want to go through the mechanics of what that looks like. Um, so let's make some kind of change, a very simple, arbitrary change in the README. And I'll just say that this is not just any poker game. This is Texas Hold'em. That's a serious difference, right? So I'm going to add that change to a README file. I'm going to save it. And now it should be the same as we did before, where it's been modified. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add it. So let's zoom stuff out the way. So git add README, git commit, and then I'll just say I updated the title. Cool. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to want to push this change up to my repository on GitHub. So I'm going to do git push, then I do origin, which is where I want to push from, and it's going to automatically go to the place that I pulled this from. So the origin is the place that I pulled this from, and I want to say what I want to send up there, right? So the origin is the spot that this is going, the place from which I pull all this stuff. I'm going to push my main branch back up to there. So if I did this like I should have in a new branch, I skipped the branching because we already went over branching. But if I made this in a new branch, I could push that branch up there, and then there would be another branch. And that's typically how you would do like a change like this. You wouldn't do it on the main branch, you do it on another branch, but we'll skip that. So we'll say push main. It's going to ask for my security thing again. And then it's going to say, all right, cool. We're done doing that. We have now pushed those changes. So if I go back to GitHub, it should say up here that if I refresh, it should say this branch is one commit ahead of this. And so if I want to merge this change with the main repository, it's going to do what's called open a pull request. And this terminology always confused me when I first learned this, because pull request means like from the perspective of the people that own the repository. If it was somebody other than myself, I want to request that they pull my code into their code base. So that's what a pull request is. So when I do this, it's going to take me here where I have to give, a title. I'll just leave the update title because that's the name of the commit. And I can give a description in here, say like updated the title of the README. I can make this as extensive as I need it to be, do all kinds of different things in here. It shows me the actual differences by file, like what has been changed by line. So here's the line that I changed, the original one in red with a minus sign. I took that out, and the plus sign what I added. And then it shows that full thing in context. And so when I make this pull request, it will now exist. It'll do some automatic checks to see if it can merge automatically. And now it's listed in my pull requests list. So I'm still in that same, I'm in the main Hired Labs repository, right? So this isn't my personal one. It has my pull request in there. It says, hey, there's a pull request, so I can have a look at it. And we can talk through this. Like, again, this is me doing this with myself, but if one of y'all want to do this as well, we could chat through here, go back and forth on the code itself. I could look at, which commits you want to have in here. There could be more than one commit involved in your pull requests. I can see which files you wanted to change. And then we talk back and forth again to see if this is something I want to commit. And then once it is, then I just merge this into the main branch. And all these things can be done on the command line, but you can also do it through here with just merging the pull request. Once it's good, it can be accepted, and we're good to go. So that is how you would contribute to a project that's out there. And that's true of any project that's out there. So this is how, again, if you're trying to build your portfolio and trying to do this professionally, opening pull requests, pulling down other people's code, working through GitHub is one of the things you should get comfortable doing.
I got a question.
Any questions? Yeah, shoot.
A lot of so like most of the companies you're going to work for, they're going to be using programs like this for projects, right?
Yep, for their internal stuff. They'll use it internally. They'll have some sort of Git. It's almost always going to be Git that they're going to use as version control. It's by far the most popular one. But they'll have like a Bitbucket or a GitHub or something like that they'll interact with online for you to do these things with. Any other questions? All right. Well, that is the entirety of what we wanted to cover. So now you've got the basic tools of how Git works. You can go grab other people's full-on programs and run them. You do need to take ours. This right here is our site that's got the keyword targeting analysis and all that stuff. You can run that if you want to. It requires some other things like Docker and whatnot, which I would definitely encourage as next steps to learn. If you're very comfortable with everything we did here, Docker, Docker, is a really cool thing we didn't cover in this class. That's mad helpful, way cool. But if you just want to get a handle on these things, please pull down the poker game, make some changes, send it back, go through the mechanics of it, work it out. Anybody that wants to stay and get the SSH hooked up so you can play with these Git things and can actually pull down other people's repositories, I'm more than welcome to do that. But anybody else wants to stay for questions, I'll hang out for a few minutes and do that. But that's the class. Anybody got any questions for the end?
I'm just gonna need some help doing the SSH, just so because like I said, I'm gonna throw everything out, but
Yeah,
I
once you get that
review
hooked
it
up, you only
after.
have to do it once, and then you can run Git stuff through there as many times as you like. So yeah, I'll help you get that set up before we go.
That's a wonderful night.
Okay. Where did y'all go to find that SSH file in the files on Python Anywhere?
So yeah, if you just go to files, there'll be a .ssh directory, like right in your home directory. So like your home username, then it's s.ssh, and then there should be some the .pub one is the one you're looking for.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't have that. I have it looks like it's in the home directory, but I don't see that at all. I
You don't
don't
see
see
the
the
.ssh? Okay. Probably the generating the key didn't work then, that first step.
yeah.
All right. So any outside of specific debugging questions, any general questions about what we covered today or in the course generally or anything else?
I guess it'd be kind of nice to kind of have a what next kind of discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, again, I invite you as next to practice. Like practice is the next thing for sure, no matter what. So like whatever it is you wanted to get from this class, practice that thing. So like what I guess put it to you, like what are you thinking you want to do next?
I have no idea.
Okay. Okay. Um, Anybody else have ideas on where they want to go next? Have like a thing that they want to build or a thing they want to practice particularly out of the class? I know
Mm,
Mike said you're going to throw everything out and start over. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to definitely build up on like the web design part.
Okay.
That seems pretty cool. I feel like it's definitely a lucrative skill to have too, because people are always looking to update their websites and add new features to it.
Yeah, yeah. You can't exist without a website. That's true.
Do y'all have other courses like after this one, or is this the only course that's being offered?
Yeah, this is the only one we have right now.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, so like really the open invitation for everybody to use our repositories as practice. Like pull these things down. You know, I would love it if we could get to the point where I could hire you directly as a developer to just like on a contract work for us or something and just do these things all the time because I know you have the skills because we use in our main project, it's a Django project. The reason that we do the things that we teach is to encourage you to get to this point. So hopefully you'll use these tools and like work with us. So in
Yeah.
terms of next steps, like if you do want to do web development and you really want to use it, stay in touch. Like I will absolutely set aside some time to go over the other things that we didn't cover, again, like Docker and stuff like that that we use. That's just a little bit further. But this is Django. It's a Django project. All the things that we did in the class, this is a direct place to apply them. So if you're interested, absolutely encourage you to do that. If you look us up, Hired Labs, Camel Case Dash Inc. is our GitHub profile, and our HL main is the main program in there. But use all these things as again the poker game is perfect because it's really low risk of breaking anything important. You can definitely play around with it. So if you're looking for practice with just pure Python, if you're looking for practice with Django, we have a couple of those things. So in terms of next steps, that's definitely what I would love it if some of y'all was staying in contact and keep practicing in that regard. But again, it also depends where, like, if you want to go professionally and be a developer. I know some people have gone through this course and been like, I never want to code anything ever again. Now I know what it is. I'm never doing this ever. And that's totally cool too. But hopefully you can apply something that we learned in some way professionally. Again, like I've said, I've never sat as a full-on developer, but I've used Python in a number of my roles and gotten paid pretty well for it. So if you want to have a discussion even deeper about you specifically and what you could do next, I'd let you set up some time with me and let's talk about it.
Yeah. Well, I'll likely be signing up for the class again just to kind of
Okay.
get a refresher.
Sure.
Will y'all be sending us like emails just to kind of keep up in case y'all do decide later on to offer more intermediate class?
Yeah, absolutely. If we develop, and we are going to develop something, I'm not sure exactly what, but we're gonna, yeah, whatever stuff we develop from here, we'll definitely keep you in the loop and announce them. We'll announce updating like upcoming classes of this one as well,
Okay.
just through Discord at least, and then probably send an email to anybody that's finished the class and just invite you back. Our next one right now, I think we're looking at February, but we haven't
Okay.
finalized the schedule, but we'll do a couple next year as well. And yeah, everybody's welcome to come back through again in the next one or one down the line and do like a refresher kind of thing.
And you're gonna send us a link for the YouTube?
Yep. Yeah, I'll send all that. So it's actually pinned in the Discord resources as like
Okay.
archive or whatever. It's just the YouTube channel.
We'll
But
check.
I'll post this Zoom in there like I always do, and I'll email it out like before. And again, that's not going away. I'm not going to kick anybody out of Discord server unless you start acting inappropriate or something like that. If you're just in there being cool like everyone is, you're welcome to stay in there as long as you like. And I hope you interact with future and past participants of the course. Right? There's other folks in there, and as you work on projects, think of that as a place where you can connect with veterans that know these same things. Right? So that's what I suggest in terms of next steps. But I don't know. Is that satisfactory, JT? Is that what you're looking for? Or?
Yeah, for now. I'll need to think about what I want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot hinges on that for sure.
If we know any other veterans that would be interested in the class, can I send them your way?
I would absolutely love that. Yeah, please, please, please do. Spread the word, tell people you know. We are always happy to work with vets. And if you found value in this, I would love it if you'd be spreading the word for us. That'd be great.
All right.
Cool. All right. Well, I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you all very much for your time, attention, and participation. And hopefully we'll see you again soon.
All right, Jeff. Take care.
Yep.
Thank
Good
you.
evening.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.